a long time ago, I had a banner on my Twitter profile. Nobody knows that because nobody's friends with me on Twitter. I never use it. But I had a banner on Twitter which said, "You have to smile to get through this shit." It was a quote by Tupac in my age group when I was in the hip hop stage, right? But the quote made sense. You have to smile to get through this shit, and this shit means the world in life. So I'm like, let me change that for me, right? That's Tupac. Here's me. You got to think to get through this shit because thinking can get you to come up with new things. It's fun and you just have to live it. So you might as well think deeply and try different things.
So, Anirudh, what's up? Welcome to the show. I'm very glad that you're here.
Thank you for having me. So the podcast is just a byproduct of whatever. I mean, it's something that I felt it was a good way to curate my thoughts and my thinking. But for me, it's something that started maybe a year and a half ago, when probably everyone goes through these stages of questioning why they're doing what they're doing and all of that. And I was in that stage, and I got a lot of help externally as well to be able to define what is it that I really care about, or that I feel that I'd want to get out of bed for another 10 years or 20 years. And I think one of the things that came out for me was I really enjoy thinking deep about things. I really enjoy it. And I wanted to share that feeling with people. Well, for two reasons. One is because today I feel we have so much more time to think about things that we want to think about. And why I say that is, if you look at how technology has immensely changed our lives, a lot of things that we used to have to think about is done and is automated for us now, right? We don't necessarily have to think about spelling when we are typing, it just autocorrects for us. We don't have to think about how to get to a particular location, open a map during a vacation. We don't have to do that. Just open up Google Maps, put your destination. You don't even have to look at your phone, it'll talk to you. You just have to drive. That also you can go for self-driving. So the point is that there's so many things that you don't have to think about, which then is an opportunity for us to think about things that we want to think about. And I think that as human beings, we've evolved because we can think, because we think about things, and that's where creativity, that's where innovation, a lot of these things come from. And that was the real premise behind the podcast, one being that, but the premise behind my own purpose that I'm at currently, and I know that changes often, but is to inspire people to think.
So you mentioned technology. Hasn't it kind of ruined it for us? The entire process of thought, per se, hasn't it ruined it for us?
Well, we often talk about thought leadership, and I don't mean that in a corporate sense, but in a sense of the word. And a lot of things that, because I also deal with messaging, a lot of my thinking has to do with listening to words of what they mean and how they are kind of connected together. So when you look at thought leadership, you could also frame that question differently and say, who's leading your thoughts? And on social media, you have the opportunity for your thoughts to be led by people who will add value to your life or people who will waste your life. You really have a choice. And so you're in the driver's seat of what type of content you want to consume. So whether social media has ruined it or messed it up for us, I don't think so. I think we are still accountable. We are still responsible for what type of content we consume. But asking ourselves that who is it in life, and of course that means across media, that's leading my thoughts. And is the person who I'm letting lead my thoughts, is that person adding any value to my life? Is that person making me think about something? Because that's the true value of social media, that it allowed us to connect with people across the world and hear perspectives like we've never seen before and maybe we've never thought of. And that allows us to spark a thought. And this can create much more accelerated value than before, where we weren't so connected. But then if you're listening and if you're talking about just viewing memes and jokes, I don't know if that's going to happen for you.
So now, you've been running your company for the past 10, 12 years now, and you've worked with quite a few characters per se. I'll put it that way. So now, the first what the Deuce question for you is, you've worked with a lot of brands and characters over the years, right? And my question to you is, has anyone ever come to you saying that they want to be a thought leader?
Yeah, on a daily basis.
I mean, and not everyone can be, right? So, I mean, what's your answer to them? What do you say?
Yes, I mean, weirdly, I actually did an episode of this just now and I wrote something about it. But so what I say is that, look, thought leadership needs three things, okay? You need to, at the base level, let's go. You need to have thoughts, okay? Now, so you should have some thoughts that are your own. You should have a point of view on things. That doesn't mean that you don't consume thoughts from others, but it means that you layer it with your own opinion, your own perspective. So that's one that obviously I assume people to have. But then it needs creation, it needs consumption, and something interesting which I found is it needs destiny. There's some really fantastic content that's put out by people which finds very little engagement. And it has nothing to do with the quality of the content. It has possibly something to do with that at that particular moment in time, were people having enough attention to give to something like that, right? So I talk about it from a thought leadership perspective, just thinking deeper on it, because yes, and to answer your question, every customer asks us about becoming a thought leader. It's an opportunity. It sometimes also is difficult because they're already jumping so quickly and not understanding that thought leadership is an outcome. You cannot be a thought leader. Somebody has to proclaim you as a thought leader. You have to be someone with thoughts. You have to be someone who can share those thoughts, and you have to have a community that wants to listen. This is what you can do.
So you said something very interesting on your podcast, and that's kind of where this question came from, is that you said you asked two questions, and unfortunately you asked these questions to yourself. Is that A, can you think, and B, are you a leader? So you work closely with these clients. Some of them are your friends, some of them may not be friends, but why is this something you ask yourself? Why is this not something you can just openly ask them?
I can openly ask them. All my clients are very close to me, and of course I openly ask them. I think honestly, and it's not out of being rude. It's not sarcasm. It's truly asking them, what are your thoughts? Because I, as someone who they are giving money to advise them in the right direction, I have to understand what they're thinking. Of course, all of them are leaders. Everyone's a leader in their own right. So it's not about, are you a leader? But yeah, of course I ask them, so what do you think? What's your perspective? One of the questions that I often ask every time when somebody brings up thought leadership is, what's your point of view on your industry? And that's an easy question for someone who thinks. And point of view means there's an opinion, there's an observation, there is an outcome to what you're trying to say. Not just tell me about your industry. What's your point of view on your industry? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What's bad with it? What's good with it? What's ugly about it? What's messy about it? Can you tell me? Because if you can, then it comes with that. And again, I think thoughts also come with experience, right? So it also has to do with the fact that if you have had enough experiences, if you've been exposed to multiple different situations, you're able to bring that in. Because let's go back to thinking, right? What really is thinking? You have all these things that you've seen, read, heard, whatever, in your mind. To me, thinking is about connecting those dots about some topic. And you can say that it could be more about going deep and connecting the right dots. It could be about connecting lateral dots and being creative. It's called creative thinking. But the point is, then the function really goes back to, do you have enough dots in your brain? Have you read enough? Have you seen enough? So that when you're thinking about a topic, do you have enough of an option to choose from of how I can connect those dots and possibly come to a completely new solution or a new discovery about what you're thinking about? And that's such a fantastic feeling when that happens. Like, we have those aha moments. Sometimes we tell it to others and we realize it's stupid also. But at that point of time, when you're like, oh shit, I've never thought about this with this. And that means that I've been doing something wrong all my life. Why don't I just shift that lens? And those aha moments come as an outcome of thinking. That's that aha. That's where it comes from. So I think when you experience that, you want to do more of that. And that's where my focus on thinking came from, because I'm not like some philosopher or thinker, and I don't consider myself to be highly intellectual either. I would say that I enjoy thinking. It's something that keeps me alive. It's something that gives me a sense of purpose in life. And I realized this when I used to work, and I used to work in strategy, where a lot of the job is about thinking about customers, and I loved it. And then I would go back to life, and I didn't like life as much as I did work. You know? And I realized why. Like, hey, what if I take the best thing about my job, which is thinking, and start thinking about life also? Can I make that fun? And it actually kind of works. Where like now I'm thinking about things I do in my life also a little deeper, and it's making it fun for me. Because that works for me. And those aha moments that come, whether about work or life, kind of keep me going as a person because it gives me a sense that I'm improving. It's like, okay, now I have a different perspective on life. And I feel that more and more people should experience this. So
how often do you get these aha moments in your personal life? And what do you do with them? Do you link them back to your work? Do you use them in your personal life? Or what do you do with them?
So I don't know how many times that happens. I couldn't answer a number for you. It happens often because I spend a lot of time with myself, and whenever I'm with myself, I usually think. But the thing is that it's not about where I use it like content or something like that. It's about it allows me to have different lenses that I wear, different perspectives that I wear as I enter. Like thinking about what my kid Zian wants and connecting the dots and having that aha moment that, oh shit, he likes this. Then what happens is that when I go home, I can put on that lens and look at life like that when I'm with him. It makes it better because now I've figured it out, right? I keep on thinking about these things. A lot of the thinking happens from mistakes. Like somebody yells at me or somebody tells me I'm an idiot. Then I have to go back and think about what I did wrong. That's also thinking. And that also helps, of course. I mean, I get that from my wife and people I work with all the time of telling me that I fucked up on something. So, but that's different type of thinking. But I think it gives me a lot of lenses to it. It gives me lenses that I can see things from different perspectives. And it's like I'm collecting these lenses. And every time I think and every time I talk to somebody, like I talk to you about a topic and I get a complete different perspective, I've kind of gotten a sense of your lens. And now all of a sudden when I talk to you more and build a relationship, I understand where do you come from? Because it's also about the journey of when you see something, it's everything that's happened in your life that allows you to see it that way. If I can start understanding that, imagine I'll have a collection of lenses. And therefore, when I'm sitting alone thinking about a problem for a customer or a problem in my life, I can wear all these different lenses. It's like me not taking your opinion or bringing you with me and attaching you at the hip to my life. But if I can see your lens, I will always have your opinion. I'll always have your opinion in my mind. And like that, I have my own circle of people who I can do that with.
So now, not everyone is articulate as the next guy, right? So when someone kind of explains their POV to you or they show you their lens and it's just not up to the mark, I mean, do you ever like just put your hand on your head and be like, what the fuck is he talking about? And when you do that, how do you kind of work with that and then come out with a solution or a creative idea or then something to actually link back to the work? How do you do this?
So I never do that because I don't think anyone's point of view is ever wrong. There is no right or wrong. These are opinions, right? So perspective is a perspective. If I'm going to start judging that perspective, I'm going to be very bad at my collection of lenses because my collection of lenses are going to come biased. I'm only going to collect lenses that agree with me, right? I don't want to do that.
That's correct. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure it's your job to kind of polish these point of views and opinions of people, right? When you're working on thought leadership.
You're right. It is my job, and I do that for work. But in the process of thinking, what happens is that when somebody tells me something where I would possibly say, hey, I have to sometimes break it down a little bit in my mind. What are you really trying to say? And break it in my own language. So that's also an important aspect, that when you're collecting those lenses, I cannot really collect it in your language because I cannot speak like you. I don't articulate like you. So I take your lens and your opinion on a particular issue. I put my language on it, which is my understanding, and I store it. Store it in my head. Like it's another dot. It's another dot that when I come to that topic again, hey, you know what? Kaushik would have said this about this. It's a good topic for me to consider. And if I and a lot of thinking, the outcome is usually decision making, right? You think about something, you take a decision. And I feel that one of the things that I've seen is that, which is quite obvious, but if you think about something, you're more likely to take a better decision. And that's not to overthink. But if you really deeply think about the situation, you'll probably take a better decision than not thinking.
Yeah, so I mean, throughout this discussion, we've spoken about your clients and different brands that you work for. When was the time where you actually got down, hands dirty with the client? Of course, your point of views are not going to match frame to frame, but then you just feel like you guys are on the same wavelength and you guys both want the same thing. So what was that aha moment and what came of it?
So, there are many such examples, okay? And honestly, with all the customers that I have, and I guess if those experiences happen often, you will have more of my attention for sure as a customer. Okay. And that's, I mean, that's not to say that I don't pay attention to others, but there are certain customers of mine and certain people, forget customers, right? People that we just can, when we are thinking, that brainstorm is just amazing. It's on a different level. We are pushing each other to think deeper. And a lot of times we come out with an outcome that's completely different than we started with. It could be like a new product idea. It could be a new campaign. It could be whatever. A lot of those discussions I have with people I work with, right? So whether it's Meenal, my co-founder, or Shoaib and Mayur that I work with, and even my team, right? Sometimes we come up with just talking through things. Yeah. And especially I work with the strategy team a lot, especially with that, we just talk through things and we come up with incredible points of view. Yeah. More than incredible, I would say unique points of view, where it's like, wow, I've never thought of this, right? And one of the things that I've started doing is actually writing them down, right? So the outcome of that is that it gives you a little bit more confidence. When you're talking to people, it's like, hey, listen, we gel well together. Like, we can do it. A lot of time when I'm writing, when I'm trying to articulate thought leadership POVs for customers, we'll say something and then we'll draw something up and we'll put some framework together, and it's like, wow, I never thought of the business with that lens. And of course I cannot tell you about it, but I cannot tell you because visual, but those frameworks are like some of those aha outcomes. And I've seen customers use those frameworks for 2, 3, 5, 10 years and come back, and I'm like, I sometimes go on their website or I'm talking to them and I'm like, oh, you're still using this framework that we discussed at that point of time. And a lot of those times, it's never intention. It was never the intention of the meeting. Yeah. It's one of those times where it's just like inspiration strikes. You're in that. You're just there, right? The stars are aligned. The customer's open-minded. You're open-minded. The team is open-minded. You're brainstorming. You're putting a lot of shit on the board, and all of a sudden, all those dots start making sense, and it creates something which is something you've never seen. And then you can start. After that, you can start judging it, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. But the full process of it is fucking exhilarating. Like, I cannot explain the type of joy that is.
The gratification that you get afterwards, I'm sure that.
Screw that. You know what? Outcomes are outcomes. You're going to think of things, and some things are going to be stupid. Some things are going to be extremely valuable and useful. But as long as they're new thoughts, you're keeping your brain fresh. You're keeping your mind continuing to think deeper and come up with new perspectives. And even in the stupidest thought, you may learn a logic that you could use for something else. That, hey, in this case, I thought about like this is so stupid, because you later judge it. But if I thought like this about this topic, it probably will. So, thinking is not only about the outcomes that you get in the thing that you're thinking about. Yeah. It is the process that you take while thinking, right? Those different journeys that you take thinking about something. And sometimes you have enough of those journeys, then what happens is that when you are asked to think about a subject that you've never thought about, you can start trying out these different journeys on that topic to come up with different outcomes, judge those outcomes, and obviously select the right outcome. So it's not like thinking always leads to some ideal or some, fantastic thought. It could lead to a very stupid thought, but it could still teach you something.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought it to this point, because I kind of want to rewind history a bit. Going back into ancient times, obviously almost zero exposure to things, but that's when we had those intense thinkers, right? And coming from those thinkers, we've learned a lot. I think we still use plenty of the things that they've taught us how to think, right? But today when you see that, it's kind of deteriorated, right? People aren't thinking the way that they used to. Is this a good thing, or is this going in the wrong direction?
Okay, so let me give you a different lens to think about this. Okay, you're saying that in history everyone had time to think, and there was thinkers, and today there's no thinkers. Okay, today we have cars that drive themselves. Okay, today we are planning trips to Mars and shit like that. Okay, somebody's thinking, man. Yeah. Like, it's not like we don't have thinkers today. Yeah. Okay, so let's not generalize that state. I think we have a lot of good thinkers, right? What you're basing your observation on is the majority. And you're probably right. Majority doesn't think. But the fact that you don't have is, what was the majority doing historically in the ages that you're talking about? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm just asking the question. Right? So it would be difficult to generalize that people used to think deeply then and they don't think now. It could be those same few people that we know that are thinking and a few people. The point is, it's about the fact that thinking is something that people should do. It's something that we are blessed with as human beings. It's fucking fun. And it leads to interesting stuff and makes your life better, because otherwise life is boring and life is monotony and life is pretty much hell, or as Jordan Peterson calls it, and I like him, life is suffering, right? It makes all this shit better. A long time ago, I had a banner on my Twitter profile. Nobody knows that because nobody's friends with me on Twitter. I never use it. But I had a banner on Twitter which said, "You have to smile to get through this shit." It was a quote by Tupac in my age group when I was in the hip hop stage, right? But the quote made sense. You have to smile to get through this shit, and this shit means the world in life. So I'm like, let me change that for me, right? That's Tupac. Here's me. You got to think to get through this shit, because thinking can get you to come up with new things. It's fun, and you just have to live it. So you might as well think deeply and try different things.
That's a pretty cool thought, actually, and I think people should apply that more. But coming back, now you've said that we do have a bunch of thinkers, right? And it's more about the majority, right? But how has society and kind of intellectual shifts influenced the art of thinking for people?
I think people have introduced newer and newer frameworks of how to think and how to think about something. When you look at, okay, let's say, for me at least, the whole industry of coaching that has happened, okay? It's an industry that I used to always look very with a skeptical eye with for a long time, because I'm like, are you serious? This is going to help me? Like, I don't need to talk to somebody to help me with my business, until I did, and then it helped. But the point is, I've grown a certain amount of respect for good coaches. Not everyone who's a coach, but good coaches who are out there, because I think they are a handful and not the majority that we see. But nonetheless, I think the biggest question or the biggest framework of thinking that coaches are able to give is get you to challenge what's possible in your life and not live life in a limiting way. Live life in a limitless way. And it's very, I don't know, it's kind of stupid to hear me say that, or like just to hear somebody say that. But when you go through it and you go through that journey and you can actually start thinking bigger than you were before, it's a huge impact on you, right? And so I think that's a framework that coaching has introduced, or rather made more mainstream. And there used to always be coaches, but made more mainstream. So I think the shifts are these different types of questions. Like, Simon Sinek had that, right? The golden circles of what, how, and why. That was a shift of thinking, right? Of how should we think about something. Today, we have people. So there's a book called Play Bigger, and in that book they talk about category creation, and they're a team of people who focus on category of a different point of view, right? And they say that we don't focus on framing the solution, we focus on framing the problem, and that's how they think about marketing or communication. So it's just a different way to think. And I think those shifts have allowed us to, one, have more methodologies to think, but two, and to your point of social media ruining it, this is where social media is helping it, because otherwise I would have never known what Chris Lockhead, who has a podcast which I love, would have ever said if not for technology, because he sits in the US and he's a part of this group called Category Pirates, and they wrote this book, Play Bigger. But without technology, I would never have access to his thoughts. I would never have access to, imagine that, right? I've never met the guy. I don't even know how he looks like. I honestly don't know how he looks like, because it's an audio podcast. So, but with that, after listening to 10 episodes of his, the weird part is I have his lens. I don't know him, but I have his lens, and I can think about problems like that. So that's the cool part, right? This is like the aha moments of thinking.
But there's also, of course, you stated a positive thing about social media and how it's helped you. But I mean, going from an uninterrupted thought to the constant buzzing of your notifications, constant information flowing to you, it's hard to think now. And even for me, who comes from a creative background and a creative industry, sometimes it's just fucking hard to think. And I don't think it has anything to do with where you're sitting or who you're talking to or who your peers are. I think it's just the constant level of communication and connectivity that we have nowadays. I think it's kind of melted our brains rather than, enhancing it.
So what do we do about it? It's a reality. It's not about expert. I'm not the expert. But it's a reality, right? That there's a lot of distractions here. So we deal with that shit. And we figure it out. And we think about, how do I find time to think in all of this? That's what we think about. How do I plan my day? How do I approach my life where with all these distractions, how can I plan it, organize it, what tools I can use, what decisions can I take so that I get more time. So let's think about how to find time to think then in that sense, right? My point is, I don't know the answer to your question because I cannot solve it. I didn't create that mess. Blame all the technologists who created social media and all of that for the mess that we are in. Okay. But I'm saying I have to live with it. Everyone has to live with it. Yet there are thinkers who are there. There are people that find time to do it. So you got to find time to do it. And you should.
And of course, there's also a huge positive side to it as well. All the influencers and content creators that are out there today, they're putting out some nice shit, right? And it's everyday shit that they're putting out. It's nothing out of the blue, nothing crazy, but it works. And that's where the virality of content comes in because it's so basic, right? So I think there's a fork in the road where it comes to clear thoughts and thought processes in the world of social media. It just depends on what turn you take, right?
So, yeah, I mean, good and bad, right? I'll tell you that I don't know about I often have to work very hard to find content that I really like and that I can keep as a dot in my mind. Not that any of the other content is bad, but a lot of the content is regurgitated. A lot of the content is kind of, the same wine, new bottle type. Yeah, repurposed, right? You know all about that as a marketer. So, yeah, so a lot of the content is is repurposed, right? Which is not a bad thing. It's interesting. But with the view that I want to add on as many unique dots in my mind to allow me to think better, to have different, then it's like it's the same dot in different colors. I'm just putting it in my mind, right? Because it's the same thing. So in that sense, it does take a little bit of effort to find content where, oh wow, okay, I've never thought of it in that perspective. Let me control S. Let me put it in my brain, And I start talking about my brain in like a third person now, because Zian talks about it like that. It's like, because when he wants to remember something, weirdly, he will actually tell his brain, please remind me that tomorrow I have to take my shoes. And it's weird because he talks to his brain, and then the next day he will tell me that we have to get my shoes. My brain told me. Like, all right. And like, so I started replying. So anyways, but yeah, so I think that's where it is.
All right. So now, coming from the same house as kids, we've grown up with parents who have their own thought processes, right? And I'll probably leave mom out of the conversation, but let me get to our dad's side, right? And the way he thinks, his background is very different from the way we do, right? And you and I both have had thought clashes with our father. So, are we supposed to take a step back, or are our parents supposed to take a step forward? And this is not just about our parents, but I mean, this goes for everyone. Nowadays, you see everyone has fucking daddy issues, right? And it's because they just can't get along.
But I can tell you that, yeah, of course, everyone got that. Of course, I mean, jokingly I said it, but yeah, everyone has disagreements with people, and especially with your parents, because you can call it out. But here's the cool part. So if you start using thinking as a practice all the time, what happens is you start, like I said, I was talking about journeys. You start understanding what journey leads to the other and how you came to that perspective in the first place. And when you start doing more of that, when you disagree with somebody, or you see a point of view which is completely absurd according to you, which is sometimes what our dad would say, or maybe a lot of people would have that with their parents saying, how can you even think like that? We say that too. Like, how can you even think like that? Well, if you make an effort to unwrap that a bit, let's unravel that back. What would be his journey? What would be his journey to come to that point of view which you found absurd? And at least with our parents, we know most of their journey. So we can actually think back, okay, that would have happened, this would have happened, that would have happened. And that's probably why he thinks like that. That doesn't mean that you agree with him, but it means that you understand where he comes from. And so the response to something that you find absurd isn't a middle finger, but it's more like, okay, I see where you're coming from. Here's why I disagree, because I'm coming from this way. That hopefully will create a much more valuable conversation. I mean, I don't know with our dad, but in general, it should create a more valuable conversation.
In general, with other people and not just family or friends, I think it's difficult to get into someone else's shoes and understand their thought process. And maybe it comes to you, not inherently, but maybe it comes to you through years of experience and working with people. But for me, understanding people's thought process gets very agitating at times. And then that's where I'll probably say I lack in that respect, right? Because I'm very strong-hearted when it comes to this is the way I think, fuck you. But I know that's not going to work in the real world, and it doesn't. It seldom works in the real world. But my question to you is then, how do you kind of train yourself to understand someone's thought process? Because not everyone can do it.
You don't train, that's what I'm saying. So as you think more and more, you start understanding these methodologies, allows you to unwrap it back. Okay. So it's not about training, it's about being conscious of doing it.
Okay.
But I find, so, if I find myself snapping back at somebody, or all the times in my life happen often that I have to go back and say sorry to somebody on message saying, oh, my bad, I acted with impulse, I didn't think about what I was saying, I said it, and it happens to me a lot, it's reduced.
Yeah.
But the reason that it's reduced is that I've started just taking a pause a bit and trying to unravel why they're thinking like that before reacting to something. And again, very easy to say, hard to do, because I know that I should respond and not react. Like I think Satya Nadella said that a long time ago, or somebody said it. But it takes time to implement. Okay, but at least it's not only about pausing and taking a breath, like how they say, right? Because that doesn't make anything go away. It's also about not then trying to think from the other person's perspective. Yeah. So it's not walking in their shoes. I find that saying quite weird, because I don't know how walking in someone's shoes will help you to think like that. But it's like trying to figure out where they come from and how to think. Maybe that's where where they come from and issues. That's probably okay. So, but it's about trying to understand how do they think. Yeah. And imagine the people whose lenses you own. Let's go back to that. You'll never have to argue with them. You'll never snap back at them. No matter how much stupid shit you tell me, I won't react to you saying you're stupid. Because I know your lens and I know how you think. And I know that this is probably normal for you to come to this conclusion. I may then after that tell you that, okay, that's not going to work. This is going to... And I'll tell you where that comes from. Because I, as a brother, I know you for a while, right? So your lens, consciously, or rather subconsciously, I already had. And you probably have mine. Because when you live with somebody, you start understanding it. So like, when you had your own ups and downs in your career, and you used to come to me saying, no, I have my business plan. Your business plan used to be like 10 clients, I'm going to charge $1 lakh, when you didn't have many skills to offer them to do that. And I'm like, it's absurd to me, okay? Because I was already, I had gone through that. So I was 4 or 5 years in the business listening to you saying, okay, that's obviously not going to work, right? Yeah, it's like, that's obviously not going to work. But imagine if I said that to you, you'd be demotivated, right? Yeah. But if I took a step back saying, I understand where he's coming from, because he doesn't have enough dots. I have more experience. Now let me explain it to him in a way that he'll understand. And a lot of times, if you remember, I used to tell you that, hey, listen, if I were you, this is what I went through. So I don't think clients will pay you $1 lakh right now. I think as per industry, I used to always say, if I were your client, I would pay you like 40,000 a month. Just giving you a realistic picture. But if you feel you can do it, go ahead. Just trying to understand you, because I know that if I say that you're stupid, you'll take offense to it. If I say that this is absurd, you'll be like, oh, you don't care or whatever. And you'll do it out of spite. That's not the outcome I want. Again, another coaching learning for me is that, events happen. And it's some equation, one of the coaches, our coach told me. But E multiplied by O equals, E multiplied by R equals O. Which is like E is an event, R is a reaction or response, and O is an outcome, right? Events you cannot control. Outcome, you want it to be something. Yeah. So then what's your reaction or response to get that out? So that's the thinking. Nice. Okay. Because if I want the outcome for you to be demotivated and not give a fuck about you, then I could just say you're stupid, you're going to fail. That's it, my outcome I got. But that's not the outcome. The outcome I wanted is for you to force you to think a little bit more about this, in my mind, stupid plan that you have that's not going to work. Because I want to protect you from failure because I'm your brother. That's my outcome. For that, I cannot tell you the plan sucks. I have to tell you it in a different way. I have to language it out for you in a different way to help you see things the way I'm seeing things. So hopefully, you take the better decision. Many times you didn't still. But that's besides the point.
Which brings me to my next point is that nowadays, a lot of the thinking is done for us, right? So many models out there, so many different type of frameworks, so many different type of YouTube videos saying this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. This information overload, what are the consequences of this information overload on our ability to think meaningful?
I don't see it as consequence. I see it as possibilities. We have more dots than ever before. We have access to more dots than ever before. That I can say with full confidence. Okay. Because of social media, because of the internet, because of having all the resources that are there, people's comments, people's perspectives, we have a lot of dots that we can pick up, right? It's really, and I'm saying this again, it's our responsibility to pick up the right dots, because if you don't have the right dots, you can have the right thinking journeys, you can even think, you can even be, you can even practice thinking, but without the right dots, your outcome is always going to be wrong, in a sense. Well, not wrong, I wouldn't say right or wrong, but I would say it's going to be slightly unimpactful, because the dots that you have are quite meaningless in that sense.
Correct. So, I mean, the information overload, it kind of, it causes that layer of superficial thinking, right? And I see that, I won't say I see it as a problem. I'm probably not the right person to say that. But the superficiality of thinking nowadays, it affects everyone's outcomes, right? So what's a way to kind of get over the superficial part of thinking?
So if you look at the word superficial thinking, I think it's kind of oxymoronic, okay? Because superficial is like on the surface. And if you actually thought about it, even for 1 millisecond, you're going to go below the surface. So maybe it's not superficial thinking. Maybe it's a superficial reaction, right? Maybe it's the superficial reaction that we just have because we see something and we've seen something happen in a certain way. If we see a similar situation, we want it to happen in a certain way. We're not thinking, we're jumping to that conclusion. It is what it is, right? So it's like, if your girlfriend cheats on you, we've seen in multiple shows, if your girlfriend cheats on you, you got to yell at her and you got to get all mad and angry, and that's the first response. Your body is also angry and your blood pressure is climbing when if she's told you that. And so the normal, without thinking, reacts or superficial reaction would be to act just like how you've seen in movies and in content and how you've thought about it, and just blow the top and be like, what the hell, how could you do that? We are over it. Rather than, if it's truly just a little bit of thought, saying, why'd you do that? And trying to understand the why. Why did you do that? Because when you understand the why, you're starting to think through the problem. You may still break up with it. That's not the point. We do it in a different way. You start thinking like, let me understand where you came from when you did it. And let me appreciate the fact that you came to me and told me. Because now I'm going to start thinking, saying, if I were in your shoes and I wasn't caught, would I tell? And now you start looking in the mirror on that thought process. And then I rewind it back and said, instead of any of those outcomes, all you did was yell and scream. Weren't you an idiot? Yeah. And so it's superficial reaction. And I think it just has to do with us being able to think and being able to do that. We feel that when we are at work or when we are doing something that requires thinking, we should be thinking. And we often, it's almost like outside of that, we almost want to shut off our thinking, right? And I'm like, keep it on. It's fun, man. Like I actually, that's my point. I'm like, just keep on the lights there. Keep thinking on. Because it's just fun. Life is better. You see things in a different perspective. You see it in ways that you've never thought about. And every day, if you continue to think, you'll see life in different ways, making life not monotonous. Because your work is going to be monotonous. Your life is going to be monotonous. Everything about it is monotonous. And that's not a bad thing. It's a routine. I mean, you can call it monotony, you call it routine. But the way you look at life, if it's constantly changing because of your thought process, it makes life slightly more livable, if I could say. But that's how I would look at thinking. I think it's a great medicine for me to find life worth living. Apart from other things like my son, I don't mean to say that I don't have anything else, but I'm just saying that it makes it more valuable, more fun.
So Anirudh, it's been a great conversation for sure. And I'm sure the audience will also learn a fuck ton of things from whatever you said. And that's kind of the point, right? The whole point of what the Deuce is not to give gyan, right? But it's for people to find out the takeaways themselves. It's for them to realize. Not everything will apply to everyone, but something that you've said, something maybe I've said, hopefully someone will kind of grasp it, absorb it, and maybe use it. But that's not the whole point. The whole point of this podcast is to talk about shit that people don't talk about. And for this one, it's kind of thinking about shit that people don't think about, right? So now, of course, I would also love my audience to know that, you've started your own podcast recently, right? Thinking about thinking, is that the name? No, thinking about things. Yeah, thinking about things. So, I mean, tell me, huh? Yeah. So, what's that about? I mean, of course, it's about thinking.
You tell me what it's about. So yes, I did start that recently. I think I've had about 3-4 episodes out. and for me, it was always about building a community of people who really want to hear it rather than going like absolute mass with the content. I guess I have to say that with like 21 and a half people listening to that. But I hope the community grows and I hope more people listen to it. My intention is that I want to just put out different perspectives of thinking on things to inspire people, to spark a thought in other people. And even if it's just one, which probably is the truth right now, I hope it happens. But I'm having fun doing it because by doing it, I'm able to like make time for myself to practice thinking, and I'm essentially recording myself doing it and pushing it out and kind of curating it out there. So if somebody learns from it, it's great. So yes, I have launched a podcast, and I'm happy about it. I'm excited about it because it gets me to do things different than what I have to do at work. It allows me my own space to think about things that are not work related and really talk about it with others. And I hope people like it, and more than like it, I hope it just sparks a thought in people. Because if it does, then they can get their aha moment, and then they want to do it again because it's like a addiction. And I think just getting more people to think more through the day and through their life, I honestly feel the world will be better. I think we'll stop reacting and start responding to things. We'll start looking at things from other people's point of view, like you said, where empathy can truly be practiced better if you think about it rather than just try and pretend to be it.
Right.
And so those are all the possible global impacts that I have, but bringing it down to scale right now, I have a few people listening to it, so it's nice, it's fun.
Awesome. So viewers, Thinking About Things is on YouTube and Spotify. Awesome. Follow it. I'm not just saying this because he's my brother, but it's actually kind of cool.
I also have a Substack called Thinking About Things. Sorry for the plug, but I actually like the Substack better. So if you want to subscribe, you can go and do that.
Awesome. Thanks once again, Anirudh. I hope I have you on another episode sometime soon, where we'll discuss even more radio shit other than thinking.
Well, I hope you can find other people apart from me every time you do a podcast. So I hope I don't have to come back. But if you want me to, I'm available.
Awesome. Thanks, Anirudh. Until next time, see you guys.